This video describes how to configure MYOB account right for ClickClock. This only needs to be done once. After that, we'll set up a few things in ClickClock. Note that these instructions are written for the browser version of MYOB account right. The desktop version has the same settings, but they may be in different locations. So, first of all, sign into the browser version of MYOB account right, then click on the settings menu, the gear icon at the top right of the screen, and select payroll settings. On the General Payroll Information tab in the Timesheets section, tick the Use Timesheets to Track Employee Hours option. Below this, set the Week Starts option to the first day of your pay period. If your pay period starts on a different day each period, for example, if you pay monthly, MYOB says that you can select any day. We'll just set this to Monday. Click on the green Save button at the bottom right of the screen. Next, you need to ensure that all of the pay items, which are called pay categories in ClickClock, that you will be using with ClickClock have been assigned to each employee who will be using ClickClock. Click on the Payroll menu on the left side of the screen. Then select Pay Items from the menu that pops up. Initially, at least, we'll use base hourly for the normal hours. Overtime 1.5x and overtime 2x for overtime, along with annual leave and personal leave. More or other pay items can be added later if required. For each of the above mentioned pay items, you must ensure that the pay basis is set to hourly and the pay rate to either a fixed hourly rate or, more commonly, a multiple of the employee's regular rate. So let's check base hourly first, which should already be set up to hourly, and it is. So we'll go back and we will set up overtime 1.5. Needs to be set up to hourly, and a regular rate multiplied by, in this case, time and a half. And we will go back to payroll and pay items and select overtime 2, which is also already set to hourly, and multiplied by 2. Next, we need to ensure that all the employees who will be using ClickClock are added to each of these pay items list of employees using this pay item, using the drop-down Add Employees to Pay Item button below the list. So we'll go back to base hourly again. And we just need to make sure that all of the employees that we are using with ClickClock are listed here. If we need to add any other employees, we can add them from this list here, drop-down list. In fact, in this particular case, we've added every employee here, so there's nobody in the list. We will then go and look at the 2 overtime categories. And we need to make sure again that everyone that you are going to use with ClickClock is listed here, and the same thing with the overtime too. Everyone is listed here. We also need to set the annual leave, or check the annual leave pay item, set up to be hourly and 1, multiplier of 1. Then we need to set up personal leave, also set up. And as with all the other pay items that we've set up, we need to make sure that all the employees are going to use it as set up here. Then you need to make certain that all of the MYOB employees that will be using ClickClock are set to hourly, that they have an hourly rate set and that their pay cycle is correctly set. Click on the payroll menu at the left side of the screen again, then select employees from the list that pops up. Next, we need to ensure that all of the employees who will be using ClickClock are added to each of the pay items list of employees using this pay item. We need to click on each employee one by one, click on payroll details, then salary and wages. Make sure their pay basis is set to hourly, that the hourly rate is appropriately set, the pay cycle is set correctly along with the hours in the pay cycle. You also need to make sure that each of the pay items that we're going to use with ClickClock are listed for that employee. And in this case, base hourly, overtime 1.5, overtime 2, personal leave and annual leave are all listed there, so that's all fine. And then we need to, if we've made any changes to it, we need to click on the Save button here and then check the next employee. It seems that MYOB doesn't have a way of going back a screen. So next employee is Elizabeth Brown. We need to go through the same things again. Payroll details, salary and wages. Make sure that the pay basis is set to hourly, that the correct hourly rate is entered and the pay cycle and the hours in the pay cycle, and that all 5 of the pay items have been set, and then click on Save. So once you've done all the employees that you'll be using, you've completed the one-time only setup of MYOB account right. Next, we need to connect ClickClock to your MYOB account right account. This only needs to be done once. After that, we'll set up a few things in ClickClock. If you've already trialed ClickClock, you'll be at least a little familiar with it. If not, we suggest that you download the ClickClock Quick Start Guide and go through the steps there first. So open ClickClock in your browser and sign in with your ClickClock username and password. The company dashboard will be displayed. Click on the configuration menu at the top of the screen and select ClickClock settings. We recommend that you set the ClickClock operation mode to simple mode for now. See the full documentation for more details. Next, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the screen. Set the start day to the same day of the week that you have configured in MYOB account right, which I believe is usually Monday. In the Select Payroll Export part of the screen, select MYOB account right. Then click on the green Save button. Next, click on the green Company File Setup button. This will open the MYOB website where you can log in with your MYOB account. The MYOB website will display and allow access to your MYOB account screen, which shows that it's ClickClock that is requesting permission. Read the screen carefully, and if you agree, click on the Allow Access button at the bottom of the screen. Note that if you click on the No Thanks button instead, ClickClock will not be able to export employee times to your ClickClock account right company file. The MYOB web page will then close and the ClickClock MYOB account right company files setup page will be displayed, showing a list of the MYOB company files that are available in your MYOB account. If there's only one company file listed, that company is automatically selected and you don't need to do anything else on this screen. If there's more than one MYOB company file listed, you need to click on the company file that you want ClickClock to connect to. A message will pop up briefly to show that a company file has been selected. Click on the configuration menu at the top of the screen again and select Payroll to display the Payroll categories screen. ClickClock has 4 built-in pay categories: Normal, Overtime 1, Overtime 2 and Overtime 3, which are listed in the first column. Each ClickClock pay category has an export tag, which is listed in the second column. These export tags must be set to the name of a pay item in MYOB account right. For this example, as explained earlier, we'll use MYOB's base hourly pay item for normal hours, Overtime 1.5, X for overtime, and the annual leave and the personal leave pay items as well. Click on the normal pay category name. This will open the update pay category form. Change the export tag field to base hourly, then click on the update button. Do the same for the Overtime 1 and Overtime 2 categories, setting the export tag for Overtime 1 to Overtime 1.5x and the export tag for Overtime 2 to Overtime 2x. Don't worry about Overtime 3 for the time being. Next, click on the Leave tab at the top of the screen. Click on the Create New link, which will open the Create Leave form. Type annual leave into all 3 fields. Then click on the Create button. Click on the Create New link again. Type personal leave into all 3 fields. Then click on the Create button again. Next, click on the Workgroups tab at the top of the screen. There will be one workgroup called Default. Click on the default workgroup name. The Work Period tab should now be displayed. Set the maximum work period to be a little longer than the maximum number of hours that your employees normally work on a single shift. 12 hours is a common choice here. This setting helps ClickClock to handle the situation where a worker has forgotten to clock in or out. This screen also contains an option to record a fixed number of hours when an employee has worked between a certain number of hours. Leave this option unchecked for now. See the full documentation for more details. This screen also contains an option to allow a meal break to be automatically deducted after a specified number of work hours. Set this to the length of your meal break, commonly half an hour or 1 hour, and set the meal break to be deducted after 5 hours so that people who work less than this will not have a meal break deducted. We'll enable that option. This screen also contains an option to highlight adjusted hours where the daily total is more or less than a specified number of hours. Leave this option unchecked for now. See the full documentation for more details. Click on the green Save button at the top of the screen. Next, select the Rounding tab. This is where you can define rules that control how raw clock in and clock out times from your workers are automatically adjusted. We suggest that initially you enable the Use Rounding when clocking in option and set it to round up and 15 minutes, and that you enable the Use Rounding when clocking out option and set it to round down and 15 minutes. You should leave the other settings on this page as they are for the time being. See the full documentation for more details. Click on the Save button to save your changes. Next, select the Overtime. Next, select the Overtime tab, which is where you set after how many hours worked each overtime category applies. Select the Use Same Overtime Setting Each Day option for now. You could also choose the Use Day of Week Overtime option. See the full documentation for more details. Click on the Create New link to open the Create Overtime window. Set the base time name to normal and the Overtime 1, 2 and 3 names to Overtime 1, 2 and 3. Now we need to set the overtime thresholds. Normal time applies up to the start of Overtime 1, which begins after the number of hours worked that is entered into the threshold field. So if Overtime 1 is set to 7:30, it means that the first 7.5 hours worked is normal time, and any hours worked after that are overtime. Remember that the numbers are hours worked, not time of day. So we'll set the Overtime 1 threshold to 7:30. We'll set the Overtime 2 threshold to 9:30 and the Overtime 3 to 11:30. So what that means is the first 7.5 hours will be normal time. The next 2 hours will be Overtime 1. The next 2 hours after that will be Overtime 2, and any hours after that will be Overtime 3. Click on the green Save button at the top of the screen to save your overtime settings. You've now completed the initial ClickClock setup. Now that ClickClock and MYOB Account Write are ready to work with each other, we can move on to the day-to-day business of using ClickClock. This part of the video looks at adjusting times in ClickClock. Your workers will rarely clock in at their exact start time and clock out at their exact finish time. Most will clock in a few minutes early and clock out a few minutes late. Some might even do the opposite. We call the actual clock in and out times the raw times. Raw times need to be fixed to produce what we call adjusted times. To allow MYOB Account Write to correctly calculate your payroll, you need ClickClock to send the correct hours through. That is, if 7.6 is the right number of hours per day to get to a total of 38 hours after 5 days work, then that's what ClickClock needs to send to a MYOB Account Write. If ClickClock sends through 7.5 or 7.7 hours, your payroll isn't going to be right. Let's assume for this video that your workers work from 9 o'clock to 6 minutes past 5 with a half-hour meal break. That makes 7.6 hours per day, or 7 hours and 36 minutes. In the previous section of this video, we set an automatic meal break of half an hour after 5 hours have been worked. We also set up clock in rounding to round up to the next 15 minutes and clock out rounding to round down to the previous 15 minutes. This means, for example, anyone clocking in between 8:46 and 9 o'clock will have their clock in time set to 9 o'clock. Anyone clocking in between 1 minute past 9 and 9:15 will have their clock in time set to 9:15. Anyone clocking out between 5 p.m. and 5:15 p.m. will have their clock out time set to 5 p.m. Anyone clocking out between 4:45 and 4:49 will have their clock out time set to 4:45. Those settings aren't going to give us exactly what we need, but let's see what they do give us. So open ClickClock in your browser and sign in with your ClickClock username and password. We need to make two changes to ClickClock first, to set the pay period to 7 days from a default of 14 days and to change the overtime threshold. So click on the configuration menu at the top of the screen and select ClickClock settings. Scroll down almost to the end of the screen and locate the display period for adjustment screens is setting and change it to 7 days. Click on the Save button at the bottom right of the screen. Next, click on the configuration menu again and select Payroll. Click on the Work Groups tab and then select the default work group. Click on the Overtime tab. Click on the Edit link in the Same Day Overtime Settings section of the screen. Change the Overtime 1 threshold from 7:30 to 7:36. Change the Overtime 2 threshold to 9:36 and the Overtime 3 threshold to 11:36. Then click on the Update button to save the new settings. Now click on the Adjustment menu at the top of the screen and select Work Period Scan Adjustment. This will display 7 days of adjusted times for the first employee in our example company. Set the date of the first day in your pay period at the top right of this screen. In our example company, this is Sunday, August 4th. What we need to do ultimately is to end up with 7 hours and 36 minutes in the total column for each day, with the period total then at the bottom of the screen adding up to 38. The times in the yellow area of this screen have already been automatically adjusted according to our rounding settings. You can see the raw times for any day by double-clicking on the scan date. So there's the raw in and out settings. So on Monday, August 5th, employee Bill Anderson clocked in at 8:58 and clocked out at 17:06. The 08:58 raw clock in has been rounded up to the next 15 minutes, which is 0900, which is exactly what we want. However, the 17:06 raw clock out has been rounded down to the previous 15 minutes, which isn't helpful for us. We can fix these times by manually editing them. Click on the pair of in-out times for the day to bring up the paired scan edit screen. Change the scan out time to 17:06, then click on the green update button at the bottom of the screen. Now Monday, August 5th is showing the correct total for export to MYOB account right. You could continue the same process for each day in the pay period for every one of your employees, but that's no fun. Instead, let's see what happens if we change a few settings. Click on the configuration menu at the top of the screen and then select Payroll. Then click on the Work Groups tab. Then click on the work group name, which in this case is default. Click on the Work Period tab if it's not already open. First, let's make ClickClock highlight the days where the total is not 7.6 hours. To make it more obvious what needs to be adjusted, click the checkbox next to the bottom option on this screen and make sure that 7.6 is entered into both fields in this option. Click on the Save button. Next, click on the Rounding tab. Change the rounding clock in times and the rounding clock out times from 15 minutes to 6 minutes. Click on the Save button at the top right of the screen. Now change back to the adjustment screen and then Work period scan adjustment. Now you'll see that 3 of the days here have the right totals of 736 and 2 of them are highlighted in pink, which don't show 736. What you might also notice on this screen is on Friday, August 9th, that the rounded in times are not correct, but the total is. So there's still a lot of times we need to manually fix. So let's try another setting, window rounding. With this setting, we can force any raw times between a start time and an end time to a specific time. Click on the configuration menu at the top of the screen and select payroll. Then click on the workgroups tab again, and then click on the default workgroup name. Click on the rounding tab if it's not already open. Scroll down on the screen to the ClickClock window rounding settings and tick the checkbox next to the Use Same Settings Every Day option. Click on the Create New button. Click on the Create New link. In this example, we'll set the start time to 08:45, the end time to 09:05, and the to time to 0900. Click on the Create button. This rule allows workers to clock in up to 15 minutes early and up to 5 minutes late, and will still record their time as 9 o'clock. Click on the Create New link again. This time we will set the start time to 16:55, the end time to 17:15, and the to time to 17:06. And click on the Create button again. This rule allows workers to clock out up to 5 minutes early and up to 15 minutes late, but will record their clock out time as 17:06. Click on the green Save button at the top of the screen. Now change the adjustment screen again and click on the Adjustment menu. Now you'll see that there's only one day that we need to fix for this employee, and that's because they clocked out 11 minutes after their expected 17:06 clock out time, which is outside the rounding window that we set. We could fix that by changing the rounding window end time from 17:15 to say 17:20, but what works for this example may not work for you, so we'll leave it as is for now and just fix this one day. Let's look at the next few employees now. They're all looking good so far. So now that we know that all our employees have the correct number of times, we're ready to export the scans to MYOB account right. Now that the adjusted times in ClickClock are correct, we can export them to MYOB and then check everything in MYOB, and if it's all correct, do the pay run. First, we need to make sure that the employees that you're using timesheets with do not have a standard pay set. You only need to do this once. So sign into the browser version of MYOB account right, then click on Payroll in the menu at the left, and then select Employees. For every employee that you will be using with ClickClock, Click on the employee's name, then perform the following steps. So you need to select payroll details and then standard pay, and then make sure that there are no hours set in any of these hours columns. We'll remove that one and then click Save. If you don't remove the hours here, the employee will be paid for this number of hours plus the number of hours in their timesheet, and that's most likely not what you want. Don't forget to click on the Save button, which we already did, once you remove the hours. So you need to perform the above steps for all of the employees that you'll be using with ClickClock. Unfortunately, yes, it's a bit of a hassle. Next, we need to open ClickClock. Next, open ClickClock in your browser and sign in with your ClickClock username and password. Click on the Reports menu at the top of the screen and then select Export. On the left side of the screen, select the range of dates that you want to export to MYOB account right. This is the first and last dates of the pay period that you want to do a pay run for. So in our case, it's the 4th of August to the 10th of August. And that comes out to 7 days. You need to make sure that the dates you enter here come up with the right number of days, or MYOB will reject it. We're going to export all work groups, so we leave the all part set here the same. On the right side of the screen, you click on Export to MYOB account right. You'll get a please wait message while it's exporting the data. And when the export's complete, a message will be displayed indicating that the process was successful. And the data's been successfully exported. Reopen MYOB account right, and from the payroll menu on the left side of the screen, select Pay Runs. Click on the green Create Pay Run button at the top right of the screen. In the Select Pay Run Details section of the screen, ensure that the pay cycle is correctly set. In our example, we have a weekly pay cycle. Set the pay period start date and pay period end date. In our example, the start date's August 4th and the end date is August 10th. Select the date of payment. We can leave this set like that for the time being. The screen will now show a list of employees exported from ClickClock, along with their expected weekly hours and the actual timesheet hours exported from ClickClock. Ensure that the numbers on this screen are correct. If the numbers are not correct, you must fix any problems before proceeding. In each case on our screen here, we expected 38 hours and we have 38 hours, so that's right. If you're certain that the numbers are correct, click on the green Next button at the bottom of the screen. The Calculate Pays screen will now be displayed. Again, ensure that the numbers on this screen are correct. If the numbers are not correct, you must fix any problems before proceeding. In each case here, we've got gross, pay-as-you-go, net pays, super, all the same as they should have been, so they are correct. If you are certain that the numbers are correct, click on the green Next button at the bottom of the screen. At this point, you can continue with your normal MYOB account right pay run process. Thank you.